It's Louise here from Recruiter Zone, one of our weekly chats. I've got a fabulous guest today, a topic I absolutely love. Say hi in the chat if you haven't already done that. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, you just you got the name there. So Dave Jenkins from Wave. Nice to be here. Nice to have a chat. And I'm glad this is one of your favorite topics. We're talking about job boards, the mix of job boards, niche job boards, generic job boards.
Superb. Now I'm just popping over to LinkedIn to just say where we are. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn, and I can see there's lots of you, do say hello in the chat and we will take questions from you as well. Okay, so I've already got 4 questions. This show is probably going to last about 30 minutes. Dave's going to share a ton of knowledge. If you have a question, do ask it as well, because that'd be really cool. If you want to know what Wave do, there's links down there, and Dave's LinkedIn profile is in the chat. Okay, so the first question is,
Are they dying?
Yeah, this is the topic. Are job boards still the platform of choice to advertise jobs? Surely not.
Well, I mean, we've been like talking about job boards dying since forever, and you know, they're always going to change. Job boards will always have to change and evolve, and we're seeing that with the way that some of the job boards are charging for the way they advertise from moving from a job that you post and you pay a set amount and you get that job for a set period, to now pay per click and pay per application. Eventually, I guess maybe they'll want to try and do a pay cost per hire, pay per hire, but they are still that you're always going to need somewhere for people to go to if they're looking for a job. There's always going to need to be that marketplace. So no, they're not dying, and yes, they are still the platform of choice. If you are a job seeker and you want to look for another job, you probably won't start on a job board, perhaps, but you'll end up on a job board for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, isn't it? Is that I must have said this a gazillion times in my life, but recruiters fish where the fishes are. And if they're using job boards and they're ending up on job boards, you're going to need your jobs on job boards.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the number of candidates that are going through the various different boards that are out there. We've got in the UK, there's probably more choice of job boards, I think, than in most other countries. They tend to have maybe 1 or 2 big players and then a significant number of smaller players. But in the UK, we've probably got 4, 5 significant job boards, all of them with a large amount of traffic heading through them, week in, week out. So you need to have you need to be fishing in those places.
Okay. Sure. So I'm going to ask you about how to pick job boards, but what are the big job boards? Indeed, CV Library, Reed, what are they? Total
Jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of jobs on LinkedIn, which I know maybe they call themselves a job board or not, but again, candidates will go there. So let's call them a job board for the purposes of this. Then you've got a whole bunch of smaller aggregators, Adzuna, ZipRecruiter, Talent. That's just the sort of generics that we're talking about. And then you have niche boards, CW Jobs, JobServe, Sex and the City. Can't think of any more right now, but nearly aviation job search. Every industry tends to have also a niche as well. And now you're also seeing the creation of sort of specific job boards that cater to flexible jobs. Don't talk so much about the gig economy anymore. It's gone a bit out of fashion, hasn't it? But of course, you have jobs that are gig jobs as well. So not only have you got generic jobs, generic job boards that cover every market, then you have niche boards that cover specific markets. You now have certain types of employment experience boards, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a few questions in there. One of them is, you mentioned aggregators. Do recruiters need to concern themselves with the difference between the aggregators you mentioned and the job boards?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, it's nice to know about. I think there's a lot of confusion over, job board aggregators themselves and an actual job board. And typically, from a recruiter's perspective, you just need to know where the candidates that you want actually are. And I think specifically from a recruitment agency perspective, I talked about this quite a lot, that the adoption of using performance marketing and using aggregators in the recruitment agency space has the adoption of that's been fairly slow, and that's mostly because the price points of the job boards are still so much more competitive than a kind of a pay per performance model. Even though I know prices have gone up, it's still significantly more expensive. So in some instances, they'll have the aggregator people all after me saying that's not true, but in general cases, it is.
So one of the challenges for recruiters, you just touched on pricing, is that not all job boards charge in the same way. So some job boards you're still paying per advert, and others are really pushing you towards those different models. I mean, doesn't that make it really difficult for a recruiter to determine how much they're actually going to spend on each ad they're putting out?
Yeah, and it's difficult to budget for that at times as well. And I think most boards will move towards a pay per performance model eventually. That's the way that we are headed. So a lot of boards are now starting to offer a pay per performance option. But yeah, they are, some of them you'll buy, like CV database, for example, you buy it on a license. Some of it you buy on a number of daily downloads. Some you buy on total annual downloads. So it is difficult, but actually that's one of the reasons why, again, moving to the performance model is challenging for some recruiters, because with a duration based setup, they pay their amount and that's what they've got for the year, and then they can work it accordingly. When it's pay per performance, the amount that you pay will go up or down depending on what you're actually recruiting for. So in some instances, it can be very, just trying to balance my comment from a minute ago, it could be very cheap to advertise for these certain types of roles if there is a lot of them. But if you're looking for a very specific type of candidate and there's not many of them around, the price that you'd have to pay for those could be very high. So that is a challenge. I mean, it's if you want to do it, it's easily fixable, but it's not necessarily straightforward.
So in the very old days, anybody who was advertising as a recruiter would use an ad agency to place all their adverts, because we were advertising in the Grocer magazine and the Sunday Times. Then the job boards came along, then the multi-posters came along, but they're not an ad agency. They're just a mechanism to get your jobs on multiple job boards. So how are recruiters making the choice where to put those ads?
Well, there are a few ways in which they can do that. So from our own, giving Wave Tracker a little bit of a plug, we analyze all the data in terms of applications that come through, and then we make recommendations on where future adverts could be placed, with the idea that you're not actually advertising every single job in every single platform that you've got, to try and be a bit more focused. If you don't have Wave Tracker and you want it, then get in touch. But if you don't have it, then you can speak to, if you do use an ad agency or a media buyer, you can speak to them. You can also speak to the job boards. Job boards now have significantly more resource when it comes to giving stats and information on the candidates that they've got. So you can get that information manually from them as well. So it's still there, but it's a bit more legwork to actually do that. You can also pretend to be a candidate. What would you do if you were a candidate looking for a job? Where do you start? And go through that experience.
The other over kind of lay on this, which wasn't a problem 5 years ago, is that now sometimes you're looking for people who are going to work remote. So you're going to be looking for your marketing director. You might have known where you'd have advertised for that job in the past, but now you're looking for people who maybe want to do remote work. So maybe they are on specific sites for that. Or maybe you want to have somebody who's going to be doing a job share with someone else. So you're looking on those type of flexible working sites, remote working, and those niche sites.
Yes, yeah, and that's where, you know, kind of coming back to there's now that third category of job board, which caters for those. Although that said, you know, nearly all the job boards now offer the option when you're posting a job to say this role is remote. I think candidates are now expecting there to be a level of flexibility around everything, really.
Yeah.
You know, whether it comes to location, hours, times, they're expecting that as well. So that's just now the world that we live in. And, you know, we've seen through the data that we've got a significant increase in applications for jobs that talk about, you know, the level that there is a flexible working option within that, whether it's hybrid or whatever. You know, the days of 5 days a week in the office, you know, that's tough to get candidates to do.
Yeah. I wonder whether there's a job board called the 4dayweek.com.
Well, there is one called 2 to 3 days. So,
Yeah.
You know, which is a brilliant name.
Yeah.
I think it's a really, really good name. But yeah, you know, those sort of sites are specific for, you know, if you want to you know, you're happy to have someone 2 to 3 days or whatever it is, then, you know, that's the place that you would go. And yeah, whether or not we end up, I don't know, do you think we'll end up on a 4-day week? Do you think that'd be the norm?
Right.
What do you think?
I definitely won't.
I ask the question. I don't answer them.
No, yeah. Excuse me. But that does make me think about what you said earlier. Think about what your job seeker's looking for, because for some job seekers, yes, they're a marketing director, but for them, the most important thing will be the remote work or the 4-day week. But for you, the most important thing is those marketing director skills. So you have to think about how that person's going to be searching so that you're putting yourself in the shoes. But one of the things around that is including salary information on your job board. And I see that some job boards are moving to models where they don't allow jobs to be advertised without a salary on them.
Yes, yeah. And you know, this is what I was speaking about at the expo last week. Just the basics of what you need in an ad to not only be indexed correctly by the job boards, but also to just fulfill the requirements that a candidate is looking for.
Yeah.
And of course, salary is one of those. And you know, we talked about this before, and have talked about it for what seems like years. And I thought that this had gone away. I didn't think this was a real problem. But you know, when I was looking at the job boards specifically around salaries at this point, there are still hundreds of jobs that just don't have a salary advertised. And I just think it's bonkers. Not only does it lower the amount of applications that you'll get, it also creates a problem for further on down the line if you're advertising for a role that doesn't give you an indication of the seniority of that role. So I used the example, I think last week, of a sales executive. A sales executive could be paid £20,000 or £200,000. It's not clear. And so you're only going to end up getting people that are not suitable for the role because you haven't advertised the salary. And then, you know, you're looking at it thinking, well, I wasted my money on the job board and they've just given me, you know, people that are not suitable. So salary, location, and a proper job title is the very least that you need to put on an ad, so you can at least have some level of targeting around who you want. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe the number of adverts that still don't have salaries on there for a number of reasons.
And I think that historically, there's two reasons. Well, there's more, but one of the reasons has been people don't want to miss anybody. I understand that. Second thing might be because they're not 100% sure what salary they want to pay, which annoys me. And the third thing is that sometimes recruiters think, well, I'll help bolster my database. Now, in my mind, that would be fine if you ever went to your database, but lots of recruiters aren't using their databases. So they're thinking of this as a kind of like, yeah, I'm going to get a load of applications for this role. I'm going to also do as a bit of fishing expedition, get these great candidates in. But if you're never going to do anything with them, all you're doing is you're getting the hopes up of many people, you're creating more work for yourself. So, I mean, I think that what you're saying is absolutely right, is be very specific about what you want. Don't cast the net too wide.
Yeah, because then you end up catching no one.
No.
And you could bolster your database, sure, but again, like you said, sometimes people don't look at those, and they should. But also, if you're not registering those candidates with roles that they can get quickly, those candidates, given the state of the market, candidates are not hanging around for a very long time at all. So unless you've got something for them, they will move on very, very quickly. We are still in a significant candidate short market, and so you're almost shooting at everybody and not getting anyone. So be very targeted, and if you don't know the salary, then really you probably need to take a better brief from your client, don't you? And just get explain to them, just because maybe they don't know and they think, well, maybe they think that without giving a salary, they may be able to hire someone for less money than they want to actually pay. You can see it as a saving, which I can see that. But actually, if you're prepared to pay £40,000, then pay £40,000 and get someone that's really good at the job. Or really suitable for that job.
But that's an education piece for recruiters, isn't it, with their clients? And when you're taking poor briefs, everything about that assignment is going to be poor from then on in. So, okay, here's a question for you. Let's take this one first. It's about, and I'm sure the answer is going to be yes, but would you advise posting to a mix of job boards or just one?
Well, I would advise posting to a mix, but because you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. But with that said, the price of job boards now has gone from £1 a job or £2 a job or whatever it was a few years ago to, in some instances, 40, 50, 60 pound a job. So only post to a mix of job boards if you're confident that you're going to get that response from there. I think we went through a phase of posting to every job board that was available to us in the fear of, a bit of FOMO, that if I don't post to X job board, that's where my candidate will be. But if you've written a good job board, a good job advert, and you've done your research and knowing that is the market that your candidates go to, bless you, then that's the one to go for. So I don't think you have to post to 8-9 job boards every single time anymore, but at the same time, maybe post to just more than one, just to, the FOMO is still there a little bit, isn't it?
What's Google for Jobs going to mean for job seekers and recruitment agencies?
Well, I mean, it was supposed to destroy the job board market a few years ago. It was launched and it drove, I think we would see that if you were correctly indexed, then you would be getting 10 to 15% more traffic to your website, more applications. So in that respect, it was a success. It hasn't taken over the market in the way that some people feared it would, although I now see that in the States they've now introduced their sponsorship model. So that's bound to follow over here eventually. So I think that will shake things up a little bit. And let's see. I think it seems a very simple market to get into, but actually it's not really. On the face of it, it's quite simple, but underneath, the way that a job board works is quite complex, and the behaviors of candidates are quite complex as well. So it would be interesting to see how, Google are the king of the internet, right? So they should be able to make a good go of it, but so far, they haven't done that great. So they need to make some improvements for sure.
I think probably last time we talked, we spoke about whether you should advertise jobs on places like Instagram and TikTok. And I'm guessing that less people are talking about advertising on TikTok right now with what's going on with them.
Well, I don't know. It's a massive platform, isn't it? So
do you speak to clients who say TikTok, Instagram, they're part of my strategy?
No. But most of the people that we will do this for will be recruitment businesses and recruitment agencies. And so the way that they operate is quite different from a direct or a corporate business, because they have to, corporate business has to worry about their employer brand, and they have to communicate that. And TikTok, Instagram, videos, all that, everything like that is an easy way to do it. With recruitment agencies, they don't have that luxury of being able to market their client's brand, so it is harder. And we still find with social media, you don't have active job seekers there, so you get millions of impressions, but you don't have active job seekers. So it's hard to take someone from being just looking through what the latest video is, to then seeing if they can be that serious to apply for a job and go through that whole process of applying for a job. You get a lot of people drop out after an initial application stage. So the sentiment of the job seeker isn't quite there.
I spoke to somebody yesterday who's got a new job board where every job is a video advert. What do you think about that?
I think they're cool. It's been a few different companies have tried it before. Monster tried it years ago. I forget what they called. They called it, and then you had a couple of other providers that would either build it, build a little animation for you, and then you had some that were recording them. It hasn't quite worked just yet, and that's because if you're doing a video of yourself marketing an ad, if you're not particularly comfortable at recording videos, then everything that you say and everything how you come across gives an impression of what that company is like to work for. So suddenly you go from a recruitment consultant to being an actor or an actress to try and generate candidates. And then historically, from a technical point of view, I think the reason why a lot of job boards haven't gone to use more video ads is because of the how that translates into speed on the actual job board itself, on the website itself, because candidates want things to load quickly. And sticking a whole bunch of videos onto a website is difficult from a technical perspective, or it was. Probably maybe a bit out of date now, but there's also that to consider. How does that come across on mobile as well? We having kind of TikTok for jobs type thing. Maybe you can, but I think it's cool. But again, it's not without its kind of challenges, and we haven't quite got it yet. But a lot of more people seem more comfortable recording videos, because if they weren't, TikTok wouldn't be as big as it is. So maybe the past efforts, we haven't been ready for it, but maybe we'll be this time around.
Well, watch this space, because I'll share some details of them at some point. I thought it was an interesting idea, and I think that all applications have to be by video as well, which adds another layer of amazingness and barrier.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's difficult as well, because a recruiter might be comfortable to share details of a job, but candidates may not be, and of course not everybody is comfortable or extroverted enough or enthusiastic enough to be actually record a video as part of their application. So again, I think what would you do for those that are not comfortable doing that? Something else to consider. But I mean, you got to do these things. This is where innovation comes from, though. So
no, and I do think they do need to think about things like job seekers who would normally apply for jobs on the bus home. I mean, like, you don't want to be recording a video with some lady with a plastic hat on behind you. So I think there is.
You do see them, though, don't you? I mean, you can sit on the bus and everyone there, or not everyone, but you do see people happily recording videos about whatever. So maybe it's a thing. But then again, is that a professional application? I don't know.
No, I don't know. Okay, so another question for you is, so are there candidates that recruiters can't reach just by using job boards?
That aren't reaching through job boards. Well, yes, there is. You've got people that are I mean, not just because we work in this world, we assume that everybody knows, which job board to go to for which type of job. And I don't know if you've ever done this. I have, but you just ask, and so we sometimes may be a bit blinkered in the fact that we assume that everyone knows where to go, and they don't. So yes, they're back to Google, but then they could also be looking at various different groups, whether or not it's Facebook or any sort of social media groups that get shared. If you're a part of a like a interest group, I don't know, you like going to. You got a yoga group that you're part of on Facebook. Sometimes there are people in there that are looking, that would want something, but it's almost a bit of a word of mouth referral type process, which is clearly still very important and very powerful. The challenge when you hold that up against trying to scale it, that's very difficult. You might be able to find a single yoga teacher, through this particular group, but if you wanted to find 100 throughout the country, then that's a different story. So it's good on a one by one basis, smaller groups, but if you need something more volume based, then you're back to the job boards again.
But some of those job boards are more than a job board, aren't they? They are communities, and they are accidental job boards. And I think that's, those, you mentioned the really niche ones earlier, and I think lots of those very niche ones didn't even intend to be a job board.
Well, a lot of them would spawn out of kind of old-fashioned message boards, or forums, when we'd have a group of people who are interested in a certain subject, and then that became a database. It became a mailing list. It became, then an area where jobs would be advertised. And it's a way a lot of the niche publications went 10, 15, well, maybe a bit longer than that now, maybe 20 years ago, when kind of the print, going and buying your specialist magazine became something of the past. So they would create these communities online, and then job boards kind of came from that. And a lot of those now make up the niche job boards that have such a powerful following, and a very loyal following as well. So that's where typically you see niche job boards cost a bit more than a generic job board, because they've created a very loyal database, because there's other content on there that they want to read and subscribe to and look at. So
So if you had the ideal generic kind of like model for where you spend your money, is a percentage of it with a big job board, a niche job board, nothing to do with job boards? And what sort of percentages would it be?
I think it would depend on the volume of people that you needed to hire.
Mhm.
If you were looking for a single person, then you would probably look at those specific communities first.
Mhm.
If you had, I'm going to go through all the different scenarios. It's difficult to be able to. It depends on who you're recruiting for and how many, and how quickly you want them as well.
Yeah.
You know, do you need? Are you happy to wait, or do you need someone straight away? So, you know, even the generic boards will have quite a lot of candidates in certain sectors, and they've generally got a bit more buying power, if you like. So it really depends. It's such a difficult question to answer based on who you want, because it does come down to how many, how quickly, and how what the demand is like for those candidates as well.
Would typically LinkedIn form part of any online recruitment strategy or not?
Well, funnily enough, I spoke to a client earlier, and you know, we concluded that the answer to that is for them was no.
Okay.
But you know, the size of LinkedIn's user base is huge.
Yeah.
They had, you know, they've got a kind of a big influx of NHS employees on there now from some of the help that they gave them in COVID.
Mm.
And of course, if you go to the job center, the coaches there will say, you know, the first piece of advice is get a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
So I think it's challenging some of the stereotypes of that LinkedIn is only for your professional industry people. And actually, it's now, I forget the actual numbers of it, but it's now got a significant number of the working population has a LinkedIn profile. So, you know, in that respect, it should probably be in most people's strategy, but maybe not everyone.
Okay.
But most people, more and more now, I think.
Yeah, no, you make a good point there. So, and lots of people, random people, say, "Oh, talk to Louise; she can help me get a job." I can't help me get a job, just to be clear. But I do say to them, "Get yourself on LinkedIn." Honestly, I say it all the time, regardless of who they are.
Yeah.
And some of them are still like, "What's LinkedIn?" But the majority are aware, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I've got a profile from 1998." So
Yeah, nothing on it at all. But I'm definitely
good
I
luck getting
am
that
I
job.
am on there. But of course, you know, LinkedIn also, you know, the jobs that they have available. So even if you just went and looked for jobs there, are wide ranging. You know, again,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not just your
No.
accountant or whatever. You know, they've got a job there on there for you know, pretty much everybody. You know, there are other job boards around, of course, not endorsing them over above everyone else, but you know, they're a significant player for certain.
Cool. So we are well over time. If anybody else has another question, pop it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to have a quick look on LinkedIn, make sure I've not missed anything. Hello, Neil. Just said hello over there. Okay, cool. So if people want to know more about, you mentioned Wave Tracker earlier, and then as a business, if people want to know more about you, what should they do?
So visit our website. We've got 3 products that we offer. So best go to wave-rs.co.uk. If you're interested in Wave Tracker, you can find out about it there, or come and find me on LinkedIn, as we're talking about it. Just stick my name in, and I'm sure I'll pop up. And then get in touch.
Cool.
Simple,
Nice.
really.
Yeah, I've put your LinkedIn profile in there. The link to Wave is in there, and the link. I'm just pointing like randomly to the. I'm pointing in the right direction though. You try pointing to the chat, Dave. Yeah, always safe. Just yeah. So get in touch with Dave. What I absolutely love about a chat with you is the enormous breadth of your knowledge, and I know you're very happy to connect with people. So if anybody does want a bit more information, please get in touch.